Um,
I have a shirt that says Hueva, though. Is that okay?
yeah, it's fine with me. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
Okay.
But I don't know your audience.
Welcome everybody to your show. It is On the Go, which is just like, I was just explaining to Sarah Lee. It's just like, this is what happens. It just pops up whenever. So I have Sarah Lee with me. Sarah, how are you doing?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm excited because we got New Year's coming up in a couple days. We'll be talking about that. But first, for those of you that do not know, Sarah Lee was actually a guest on your show back in August of 2020. And we had quite a conversation because it was like you were pregnant at the time. And then you were also kind of going through, we talked about how you were opening up a yoga studio and then like COVID hit and that kind of like put a pause on everything. So if you don't mind, can you share any updates on kind of like what's been up since that episode?
Since that episode, I had a baby.
Okay.
And yeah, she was born in October right after. So she's just over a year now. And since then, I've been like really the boring stuff, you know, like trying to balance your work, being a new mom sort of life. And it's been a struggle. It's like really hard, but you know, you try to keep that same sort of normalcy. So I've been doing the same thing here. We still have the studio. We have our Patreon page that we talked about last time, where we have like a ton of classes and we post and all that sort of stuff. So I've just been continuing to stay on that road, mostly to, you know, keep a little bit of my own identity while still coming into like this new, being pushed into the deep end of this new mom life, you know? So it's been tripped out.
What I want to know is, I don't know if we talked about this, but were you kind of like, I got this, I know what I'm doing? Or were you kind of like freaking out about having a kid? You know what I mean? And does it change once the kid is actually here?
No, I mean, not for me. I can't say for everybody, but definitely not for me. It was almost like you have a whole set of worries when you're pregnant. You know, like all of the things. Is the baby gonna be okay? Am I gonna push this out of my body? Like, it's so crazy, you know? Yeah. And then when the baby's actually born and it's in front of you, you're like, how just like hopefully keep this thing alive. Yeah. It's completely different. So, I mean, I guess maternal instinct kicked in, but for me, it was just more like a sense of responsibility to someone. You have to keep it alive.
Yeah. Like, well, especially during like COVID, right? So there's all these extra precautions. I mean, I've heard that like first time parents are like very like over like cautious, right? Which makes sense, right? But I would assume it's even more like pressure during like COVID and stuff like that, right?
Absolutely, because, you know, I mean, I know my parents have like their own lives. You know, even if you have a babysitter, they have their own lives. And now you have to like wonder, where have you been? What are you doing? Are you going to church? Like, have you been to a party? Are you wearing your mask? So it is super different, I'm sure, than how it would be if you didn't have a baby during COVID. And yeah, it's like super scary because everything, like now she's starting to like walk and pull up, and I bought her a little helmet that's just like a little cushion helmet just in case, and she bumps her head all the time and you freak out, you know? So I invite all like the second and third time mom energy my way because man, this stuff is it's really hard. Gotcha. And I never was like that kind of person or like woman that was like, I'm going to be a mom. Like, that's what I'm going to do. You know, it's like so great for people who know that that's like a goal that they want in life, but that wasn't necessarily something that I thought.
For sure. So it's been about a year since you've been a little bit over a year since you've been on the show. How would you say like the kind of, I don't know, like the yoga kind of Patreon page has grown or changed? Is there something that maybe you've done differently or that you learned along the way in the past year?
Yes, because we started with pre-recorded classes only. So I was just recording classes at my studio or anywhere I could. Once I got really pregnant, I just did it from home. And so I continued posting classes that were only pre-recorded. Then once I had the baby and I wanted to get really back into it, I started doing live online classes. So that's kind of how it shifted from I suppose our first go ahead. And so that seems to be pretty cool. It kind of gives people a sense of like still community and, kind of like we're doing this together versus I'm just going to pop on this video and like, maybe I do, maybe I don't, I don't know,
Yeah.
So that's, I think, kind of helped a little bit sort of get back into like a normal feeling of going into yoga class. It's not the same, but it helps a little.
I would assume it's quite an adjustment. So do you have, going into, like I mentioned, we got New Year's coming up in a couple of days. Do you have kind of like big plans for the coming year as far as like the yoga stuff goes? 'Cause I know you mentioned before we started recording that you're taking like a little bit of like a holiday break, correct?
Yes, I'm taking a holiday break for the month of January. I just thought it was something that I needed to do just to kind of relax, also my mental health. I know this wasn't something that we had talking about, but like the yoga community for me and the wellness community for me right now is, I don't necessarily align with it 100%, just because there is a lot of conspiracy theorists and a lot of different things that maybe I don't see eye to eye with, and that's fine. But it kind of feels funny when you're in a community, in an industry, and then all of a sudden it's like you don't feel a part of it,
Yeah.
So I'm gonna take some time. That's also why I'm taking some time off and focus on my own yoga journey and sort of reconnecting with instructors and people that I feel either are more similar to what I'm going through in the moment. And that doesn't mean for me that the other person needs to believe what I believe.
Mm-hmm.
But, I also think there should be a mutual respect with people's beliefs. And,
For sure. You did mention conspiracy theory, and I want to bring up something that we talked about. We message each other every so often, and you told me that you weren't going to tell your daughter that Santa's real. And
I'm not.
So did you, first of all, I know Christmas is like done, but did you grow up
Christmas is over.
Yeah, it's done. Get over it, right? But did you grow up believing in Santa? Was that something?
Yeah, I did.
And then you're making the choice of like, nah, that's not going to fly in this house.
Yeah, totally. And so I feel like I have one memory of an aunt telling me this like a super detailed story about like one time where she almost caught Santa.
Mm-hmm.
And when I look back and think about it, I'm like, damn, girl, like that is a lot of effort. Like it's cute and all, but that's a lot. It's a lot.
Somebody broke into the house. You should be concerned.
Exactly. Weren't you scared for your life? Like what the hell?
Yeah.
A white man coming into your house? Like, no, thank you.
For real. So we mentioned that Chris.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, so I recently saw, my mom gave me I think it was like either a Texas Monthly or something like that, of the origins of Santa Claus. So she's like, hey, read this over maybe so that you can sort of explain to your daughter like where Santa Claus came from. So she's not completely out of the loop with, her peers or whatever. So, it comes from somewhere. So at least maybe teach her the history, which I thought was a really good idea.
Yeah.
So she's just not like blowing everyone's cover,
For sure. Yeah, for real. So by the way, real quick, before we move on from the Christmas stuff, when you tell people that about this Santa thing, do they have the same reaction I did where I'm like, what? Like, how can you do that?
Yeah, for sure. They're like, she's going to be that person that tells all the kids. I'm like, no, we'll work it out. Like, we'll
find a compromise. Yeah. So like I mentioned, Christmas is done. And right when Christmas is done, people turn to New Year's Eve and kind of, that kind of celebration. Do you do anything like any sort of traditions for New Year's Eve? I know some people do like the grapes. Some people do like the colored underwear, whatever it is. Yeah. Do you do any of that stuff?
No, I don't, because don't you find, I don't know, I feel like the expectation on New Year's Eve and around New Year's is so high. Yeah. And I almost like, I'm setting the bar real low so that there's no way to feel upset. But no, I don't do any rituals as far as like the grapes or the colored underwear. It's more just like have some champagne and a good time if you can,
Yeah, for sure.
We do in yoga though, we have a sort of like a practice that celebrates different or momentous times in the year. So like a New Year's practice or during the solstices, stuff like that. A lot of yogis do 108 sun salutations. And that is just like a way to honor their practice, honor where yoga comes from. 108 is like a really spiritual number in yoga. And so that's something that we've actually done pre-pandemic was we would come together right after New Year's or around New Year's and do 108 salutations. The last time we did it was right before, it must have been the January right before, so January 2020, and it was really cool. So the whole studio was packed, everyone's doing sun salutations. It's kind of exhausting. It takes about 2 hours. And yeah, it's just like a repetitive sequence, 108 times.
So is that happening again this coming? Like,
I think I'm going to do it. And so a lot of people choose to do it on their own as well.
Oh,
so
okay.
I know a lot of yogis that are like doing my 108 salutations to mark the new year. So I think I'm going to break my on holiday rule and maybe do like 108 salutations with people if they want to, you know?
Yeah.
I think it's kind of cool.
For sure. I think one of the things about New Year's, I don't know if you do like the fireworks and stuff like that as well. I don't like to do that just because I have my dogs and my dogs freak out. Like my dog already has anxiety and stuff like that. But one of the things I do like to do during New Year's is like, instead of like looking forward of like, oh, I'm going to do this in 2022 or whatever it is, it's more of just like a reflection of the past year, you know, like, okay, what happened in that year? Did I grow? I think that's like, kind of like it could possibly be more of a therapeutic or kind of more healthy way to do it, as opposed to, like you said, like setting expectations. I definitely think like you set the expectations or you set was it the resolutions, and then like within like 3 weeks in January you're already like, I'm done, like I'm good.
Yeah, and it's a bummer, right?
Yeah,
you like feel bummed out about it.
You already started off the year like on the wrong kind of like foot and stuff like that. So I like to look back on the year and just say, okay, like what happened? Like, okay, obviously I'm still around, I'm still, you know, healthy or whatever it is, like stuff like that. Do you do anything like that where you kind of like look back at the previous year?
I haven't in the past, but you know, just going through this year, this first, or you know, 2021, I think for me was a little bit harder mental health wise, like adjusting into this new role and stuff, and like coming off all the postpartum stuff. So I started seeing like a therapist and just doing talk therapy, things like that. And so along with that, I've really been trying to journal, and I'm not very good at it, but at least at the end of the day, I can put down like bullet points of things that I liked from my day or was proud of myself for, or found gratitude. It sounds cheesy, but like a little bullet point list at the end of the night like works for me, even if it's on your notes app on your phone. Yeah. So I'm probably going to take your idea and do that this year because it's kind of aligning with what I've been doing for the past year, which I think has been keeping my shit together a little bit more. Sorry, gotcha. I can't curse.
How dare you? No, you can.
I know.
By the way,
You're mentioned a monster and you curse.
Yeah. By the way, for those that don't know, I called her a monster for saying that Santa's not real. So we talk about New Year's Eve, but we're getting older. Do you struggle to stay awake when it comes to like midnight?
All the time. And so does my husband. Yeah. So like in the last year, we were able to stay up because our kid was so young that we were like doing night feeding, stuff like that. And, you know, she was just right around the time where she was kind of giving us a long stretch of time. So we put her to bed like at a real strategic time, and we actually stayed up. I was surprised. But prior to that, it's a struggle. And I feel like it's going to be a struggle this year too. Just yesterday, my husband was like, maybe we should do something, like at least just have like some friends outside, like whatever. I'm like, dude, how are we even? Like I don't even know how we would do it, but it is a struggle. Do you find that as well?
I do, especially like not just with New Year's, but like, for instance, I think it was yesterday, I went to go play Ultimate Frisbee. I came home, it was like 8:00 and I could have sworn it was already like midnight. Like I was like, dude, I'm done. Like I'm going to bed, you know? And it was just like, I looked and it was like 8:45 and I was like, what? Like what's going on? So I can't imagine doing that for New Year's, but I know there was a time during like New Year's Eve celebrations, obviously when I was younger, like maybe like early 20s, we would stay up. Like I remember one memory very well, where it was like 7 a.m, January 1st. And one of my buddies, like he hadn't left, like he was still there. And we were, and not just that, but like he was still like awake and drinking. And I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm doing this too. So it's like 7 a.m. We're hanging outside my parents' driveway, you know, passing a bottle of like whiskey back and forth between each other. And there's like this like lady on her morning jog already. Like, and so we were like, hey, Happy New Year, right? But it was like, dude, we're still going. And she was very much like, all right, like I'm going to wake up early. I'm going to
grabbing those resolutions.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh man, we should probably get started on ours. Right. But it was just one of those things where like back then it was like not a problem. Yeah. And I want to say last year, or maybe, and also the year before, it was just like, I'm excited, but the excitement starts to wear off by like 9 p.m. You know what I mean? It's just like, oh man, like I wish I could, stay up and have that energy, but really it's just, it's not there, So no. I'm curious to see how this year is going to be. Cause like I said, like yesterday it was like 8:45 and I was already like, I'm done. Like I'm ready for bed.
I feel that.
Yeah. Maybe I can take a nap.
I totally feel that.
Yeah, maybe I can take a nap and then catch like the 2 a.m. kind of like, oh, it's midnight in the West Coast kind of thing.
You're just gonna skip over like the actual countdown. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Do you have plans for New Year's at all? Like, do you do that?
Well, usually we do like we hang out at like my at my parents' house, and usually it's like friends like filter through like as the night goes on. Mm-hmm. Friends and family stop by, they say hello, whatever, pop a few fireworks, that kind of thing, that like my brother would do with his kids. But I don't know about this year. I think this year we're just kind of taking it more chill. Just kind of like, we'll probably do like obviously like the cookout and stuff like that. And we try to do like the grapes. I'm not a big believer, but like when you have like a parent who is a big believer in that, you participate. You know what I mean? I don't want to just like, no, I'm not doing that, right? So it is one of those things where I think we're just going to take it a little bit more chill this year, especially because like even like Christmas didn't feel like Christmas. You know what I mean? It was just kind of like, I don't know. Everything is just kind of, I sound like such a Grinch or like an old like. No,
it does kind of sound like up in the air, or even like having to adjust to maybe like this is the way it's going to be. I don't know, So it is different than if you think like I've gone all these years with Christmas feeling like one way, and then just these past maybe 2-3 years it's been completely different. So for sure it's going to be like an adjustment. Plus the Grinch is a good guy anyways.
Yeah, he's just misunderstood. That's all it is.
Yeah, for sure.
One of the things I want to ask you about before we wrap up, if you don't mind sharing, you mentioned that you were kind of dealing with you were going to therapy. Mm-hmm. I just want to ask real quick, not to get too much into it, but I want to ask, did you reach out for that, or did somebody have to convince you to seek it out?
I reached out.
Okay.
I reached out. It took a long time though. And it took a lot of discussions with my husband as well. Like him saying, maybe you should talk to somebody, because he's very supportive. And when I was going through my struggles before I started going to therapy, I could also see that it was way beyond his pay grade. You know what I mean? Yeah. It was way beyond. And he's a very smart man and can help me with so many ways, but it was just, it's just beyond, you know what I mean? So it took a long time. Sometimes I would open up my browser and try to look, and then I would close it and just like forget it. And then, I would think, I'm not going to find someone here. Like, I'm not going to, all that sort of stuff. But, luckily I was able to, and I'm happy. Like if somebody needs the resources they can message me about all that sort of stuff, and I can send them the things that I've been doing. I'm very open about my process through it. So I did reach out. I found a woman and I found her website here in Laredo that I really resonated with. And I was lucky to get an appointment. And so I've been doing it for about 4 months now. Mm-hmm. And I could see a huge difference in talking to somebody that is, unbiased about the whole situation and is educated in what could be potentially going on.
Yeah. And the reason why I asked is because I saw a while back on my Facebook, like news feed, somebody was like posting about how they were like ashamed to do it. They were ashamed to like seek for help. And they felt it was like proving that they're weak and stuff like that. And it's like, dude, you shouldn't be like ashamed to do that. Like that's what they're there for. You know what I mean? They're there to help, and it's better to seek that. And so it's better to like seek that out, because you never know, like it could definitely, like you mentioned, like it's been a help, right? Like there's just so many different things, and even you may have your doubts, but just look into it. I think it's important for everyone to kind of, don't be ashamed. Don't be like, oh, I'm weak or anything like that. Like just go, look for it. And that's why I want to ask, like, if you were like, if that was a struggle for you, or if you seeked it out or anything like that.
Yeah. Like I said, it was definitely a struggle taking the step, but I think it's important to take the step. If it's even a thought in your head, why not just try? You know what I mean? Because it is important. It's important for people to talk about too, because I know that I've told my friends about it, and that's encouraged them to seek out help. And now I feel like they're doing a lot better. And so I think it's something that if it comes into your head and you think like maybe, go for it. Like really try. There's a lot of online resources now too. So that could be a way to sort of maybe see if that's for you. And then, you know, like I said, if people need resources and to know a little bit more in depth about what I did and the approach that I took, like I'm happy to also, you know, give somebody that.
Even if you don't think anything's wrong with you, like even if you don't think like, oh, this is wrong, like no, dude, like you think you're fine still, you'd be surprised at how you can still become a better, you know, person or however it is, whatever it is that you're dealing with or that you may not realize that you're dealing with.
For sure. And even just like an observer of your thoughts a little bit clearly, like knowing what your tendencies are. My tendencies were to have very negative self-talk, that I'm way more harsh on myself than I am with other people. So a lot of the ways that I reframe things is like, would I be telling my friends this? Like if somebody were telling my friends what I'm telling myself, I would probably kick their ass.
Yeah.
You know, I'd be like, what the hell, man? Don't talk to my friend like that. But yet, like, you do it to yourself. So it's just kind of one of those things where you bring those sort of thought processes into the forefront, and you're able to either stop your patterns or reframe or take a more gentle, positive approach, you know? So I think it's helpful, like you said, even if you think there's not something like really wrong with you, you know, it's really good to just at least, if there is a thought in your mind, like, oh, maybe I could benefit from talking to somebody, like just do it. I think so. Yeah.
Especially because like we're so caught up in like our kind of like daily life, right? That we, it just helps to bring in somebody from the outside to like kind of look at it, like what we're going through or stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like, again, you might think like, well, I'm fine. And you could be, but there could, you know, just the fact that you have somebody come in and just kind of like look around and say, hey, you know what? Like, this is something that I'm noticing, or whatever it is, however the process goes, right? Before we wrap up, again, where can people find you on social media and also the Patreon page, stuff like that?
So on social media, I'm mostly on Instagram, and that's South_Texas_Yogi. And then same thing for Patreon. It's patreon.com/same thing, South-Texas Yogi. And like I said, we're taking a little break in January, but we're just I'm just re-inspiring myself, and we'll kick back up like literally the first week of February. And there's like tons of online classes, pre-recorded classes that we've done and are posted, probably like over 150 just yoga classes. But if you include meditations and tutorial videos, there's so many. So you could still get a lot of benefit for, you know, as little as $3.99 a month. So, you know, it works out to be pretty good if you're just kind of like trying to dabble in it.
Gotcha. So even though you're taking a break, they can still sign up right now and then have access to all that stuff, correct?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, it's been a fun conversation. We're going to wrap it up already. Thank you so much for, you know, coming on here. And like I said, just kind of talking about a couple different things, kind of like what you've been up to, New Year's, and then kind of what's going on with the Patreon page. So again, Sarah Lee, thank you so much. Everybody else will be back next week with a new episode.
you.